Whew, I don't normally touch all this early access beta bullshit most of the time, but World of Horror caught my eye and seemed complete enough to be worth my attention. And I was pretty right. What we've got here is basically one giant love letter to the oldies. World of Horror is an amalgamation of Realm of Terror coupled with Eldritch Horror and a dash of Sweet Home. The result, an explosive cocktail of Eldrithian goodness. As advertised, WoW is classified as a roguelite style horror RPG. Rightly so. This game fucking oozes with style and atmosphere, and for a game that's only presented with a minimal graphics base, it puts other pixel art to shame with its amazing detail and descriptors. I mean, right from the start of the game, I was enthralled. I wanted to look at every corner of the screen just to admire its beauty and detail. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. WoW is a roguelite game focused around stopping the summoning of an old eldritch god from coming back. You progress in the game through solving mysteries which have their own conditions of resolution and difficulties. Once solving all of them, you head to a final endurance dungeon and seal the deal. What we have here is an absolute love project. This is one of those things the dev is really involved and serious about, and it all shows that off wonderfully. Now, yes, bear in mind, it's nowhere near done. The system itself does work, but there are plenty of bugs and missing content from the final show. And whilst most of it doesn't get in the way of playing it right now, there are some annoyances here and there that the more experienced player will probably be disappointed by. So to start off, you boot up the game in this little retro boot up screen, something you'd see from Atari or Commodore, what have you. Fanciful main menu pops up, already giving you a good vibe for what's ahead. Hitting New Game, you're shown a menu of selections. Each of these is a different way of starting up a new adventure. But before you even get to that, bam! The game tells you, hey, did you know you can make me colorful in all sorts of ways? You know the HUD customizing in Deus Ex? That's this, but for the entire fucking game. The amount of schemes and mix between 1 and 2-bit is just insane. I had a lot of fun just cycling through all of it, so on to the adventure selection. The first option is a short tutorial of sorts. It takes one of the available mysteries from the main game and just puts you right in it for ease of use. I'll say it right now, by the way, if this was used as a demo for the game, it would work miracles. I'm not kidding. It's one of the most fleshed out mysteries out of the bunch, and it's a great opener. The second option is a bunch of predefined parameters for another ease of use option. Good for your first playthrough of the main game, and is exactly what I did. Third is your normal, all randomized conditions. Using everything you've unlocked, it'll pick from the pool and let wild. Fourth is the meat of it all. You pick everything, down from character selection, background, the god that's coming out. You even get to access these more interesting options like prioritizing new mysteries over others you've yet to finish, so you can see everything the game has to offer. Choosing a so-called timeline to affect frequency of events. Even complete stat randomization for items in the game, so you don't really know what to expect. It's ambitious. Now, the spectacle for all of this is the mysteries. I keep using that term. If you want, you can look at them as they're the dungeons of this game, or perhaps the quests might be a better term. So I won't try to go directly spoiling all of them, and only because we have about half the promised amount for when the game comes out, I would simply give too much away. But I'll present some of them in all their glory so you get the gist. The tutorial mystery is The Case of the Spine-Chilling Story of School Scissors. Whew. That's a mouthful. You're sent into the high school after you receive word of a horrible rumor floating around concerning a woman who roams the halls slashing up students with big old scissors. A friend of yours is attempting to perform a ritual that will banish the entity, but during their excursion, they get caught and subsequently can't finish what they started. Here comes you. You've got one night to finish the preparations or else the lady will roam free and claim many more lives. It opens up with you already at the school. You've got your friend's diary which describes the tasks ahead of you. Find some chalk, the holy candles, and also the symbol inscription needed to summon and banish her. Now, for the most part here, your destinations are linear. You're given a different selection of things to do, storage, lockers, explore, but you'll be mashing the explore button for this mystery, and pretty much all the other ones too. It's just how you progress along. I know I didn't quickly explain the HUD, but that's because there's a lot going on with the HUD, and you kind of just get a feel for it as you play. The left side of the screen is demonstrating what's in front of you, the right side is your statistics and items. You'll sort the menus out, they're not that complicated. So you start exploring. Exploration consists of time moving forward, which is emphasized by the Doom meter filling up. Doom equates to your time available. It's the timer of the game. Typically increases by 1% every exploration you take. You can lower it by completing quests, and if it reaches 100%, it's game over. Exploration results in different events unfolding. These can be differently applied things, but for the most part, it's usually an event card shown to you that will present one or two choices, which are usually skill checks in the end, or a singular outcome that affects you regardless. Skill checks act as rolling a d10 along with a luck modifier, and the goal being to roll lower than your affiliated stat. The math is hidden by default, but you can turn it on if you wish. Succeed the check, good things usually happen. Fail, and bad things almost always happen. Exploring enough will eventually lead you into a combat encounter. This is where your mortality truly comes into focus. You can enable a tutorial on fighting for your first fight. It helps, but it's a little awkwardly paced and described. I'll just sum it up to keep it simple. Combat works on inputting different available commands that cost a certain amount of action points. You fill up a bar of 200 available points using whatever it is at your disposal. Typically you have a weapon, but your offensive actions allow you to attack by kicking, which is a low cost, low damage option, hitting things with your melee weapon, and spending a large amount of points for a stronger attack. In addition to these, you can prepare them in the same sequence. Preparing an attack gives you a higher chance of hitting, and you can do this either by attack boosting, which gives you a small bonus in return for small spendage, or by using the prepare move for a guaranteed hit. Later on, if you're lucky, you'll find guns, and they're very powerful. Apart from that, you get defensive abilities, like dodging, which heavily negates the enemy's ability to hit for their next attack, or preparing to take a hit, but mitigating it in half. Supportive moves like scrounging for an impromptu weapon, requesting ally assistance during the fight, even more unique possibilities like offering prayers during combat. You even have a repertoire of spells, but I'll get to those later. Using what you know, you'll start devising different strategies that fit your equipment and stats to best the monster. You'll quickly fall into a routine of doing the same succession of moves over and over, because for the most part, it doesn't get much more complicated than this. But the combat is satisfying enough, and trying to figure it out is always a hearty endeavor. Finally gathering the required materials, I refer to the book to finish designing the symbol required. The summoning is underway. The big bad is here, and she ain't pretty. Now, not every mystery actually ends in combat with a boss, but this one does. Bosses tend to have higher HP and maybe some special effects. Their biggest concern, though, is that their damage is way higher most of the time. Sadly, I tried to give it my all, but I fell short on this one and died. But it was actually good that this happened, because now I can make a direct reference of the things I did the first time around and see how it compares to the second time. And honestly, I was surprised. Things were very similar, but not entirely. The random events were different. I mean, I know I say random, but at the time I had no clue if this was all scripted or not. My first enemy wasn't the same either. It was pleasant to see that truly each time would be unique enough to differentiate itself from the other dozen times you play. I mean, of course, this only goes so far, but it's satisfying. I get back to the boss this time, but to my surprise, I actually messed up the ritual, which was kind of awesome. I didn't get the impression you could mess it up. I figured plot armor or some such would keep you on a linear route, but fuck me. I messed it up, and the entity is in really big bad mode now, and I still have to face it! Shockingly, I actually managed to take her down, and in what would be considered a bad end for a story, I take up the mantle of the Scissors Lady and don the scissors myself. This single mystery really sold me onto the game. It was short and sweet, but had enough precision laid into it that I was really eager for more. This is why I say it would make a good demo. It has everything the game needs to showcase. So I gave the second adventure a try, and the full flesh of the game came out onto me here. It was also at this time I'm alerted that one of the old gods is being called upon. Hoodoo, the Devouring Fire. That's a pretty prominent name. You take the role of Aiko for this one. She's a dexterous fighter oriented around attacking fast, so combat is her shtick, whereas the others have more supportive methods of play. And his condition? I take extra stamina damage. Now, I didn't actually know what that meant at the time. You have essentially two life bars in the game, stamina and reason. Anyone familiar with Cthulhu tabletop games knows what this is, but the lowdown is stamina and reason act as two separate pools of life that can be diminished individually. What might lower stamina may not lower reason, and vice versa. But the deadliest stuff to watch out for will damage both collectively. If either one reaches 0, then that's it, game over. Inherently, I figured combat would be based around stamina. Just makes sense, right? You get hit, you lose blood. I don't think that's a poor rationale. The enemies, for one, only have a singular health pool. Later on, I obviously get shown differently. You can just as easily lose reason depending on the damage type the enemies incur. Shame on me for not paying attention, but this made me heighten my attention. I knew I had to take the game a little more seriously than I was first expecting, which is a good thing. So I'm a fighter who's gonna take extra damage. Well, I'm not sure if that's a good combo or a bad one, but either way, it doesn't make my job any easier. You get shown the town screen here, you'll be prompted being asked if this is your first time playing. If so, you get a quick rundown on some of the features available to you. A bit of it was already demonstrated in the predefined mystery I just played, so it only told me so much. Simply put though, for this screen, you return to your home, which is a base of operations. Here you pick out the next mystery to go on, and when you return afterwards, you can rest up and prepare again for the next. Ultimately, your end game goal in terms of gameplay is to find the 5 keys that unlock the lighthouse. Lighthouse looms ominously over the town. No one goes in this place, yet clearly there's some bad mojo surrounding it. You're not actually told at first that this is the place you're trying to enter, but as soon as you finish your first mystery and get given a lighthouse key, it becomes a self-explanatory thing. Your home is privy to other little knickknacks to mess with. You can change your outfit, check the news, and look outside your apartment's peephole, which is usually not a good idea, and I wouldn't be surprised if these little things actually have a heavier impact as development of the game continues, as you'll note later on in the video. But the real purpose is to get another mystery going. 5 mysteries, randomly picked from the available pool. So far we've only got access to 12 mysteries in our early access excursion, and beyond that, some of them don't even function properly all the way. It's not enough to deter you though, it all moves well enough. The plan is for about 20 to be available at launch. It's also important to note that, due to the dangerous nature of beta games, it's anyone's guess if something is even operating the way the devs intended, or if it's working flat out at all. And I'll be referencing that kind of stuff as we go along, so just take some of the finer points with this game with a pinch of salt. The first mystery I give a shot at is Freaky Feature of Found Footage. All of the mysteries have the same letter naming scheme. It's very cliche and it's cute. The setup is some students, about a year ago, went about making a film documenting local folklore for a school project. Of course, this ends up with something bad happening and them getting lost in the woods. A man is now investigating about the event after so long, but apparently no one actually knows who he is, and no one recalls a man being hired by any of the family involved. Cue us stepping up and figuring this shit out. So this mystery is handled like most of them. Generally, you are given locations to go ahead and investigate on this world map. Your goal to further the investigation is to investigate the locations marked with the circle, but you have the freedom to examine other areas, though they won't progress this chapter at all. Bear in mind, certain events are more prominent in other locations if you know what's what. These types of mysteries also hold secondary objectives you can do. Fulfilling them usually leads to a better reward at the end or some avenue of help along the way. If you can spare the effort, and more importantly the doom, to do them, it's usually well worth it. Also privy to these different locations, they're home to additional options that you can explore. The school lets you head out to the schoolyard, where you can convince students of the unnatural horrors occurring and entice them to join you in your foolish quest. It depends on your charisma how well you can convince them, but you can also sacrifice some experience just to outright recruit them. In between my review and the latest version, students used to just give passive stats. Apparently they do a little more than that now. You can also threaten them into service. How the values work for this is beyond me, but just know that failing it scares them away and makes Doom go up by a large amount. The library enables access to spell studies. Raise the Doom level a bit to earn a new random spell or to gain minor experience. Now, obviously I'm referencing Doom a lot here, but what is it exactly? Almost every time-consuming activity, exploring, shopping, the school, and some other stuff will spend time, and Doom will raise higher. Starting at 0% and ending at 100% is the timer for your playtime. If it reaches 100%, game over. Exploring raises it very slowly, just 1% each time you explore. Studying, on the other hand, or worse yet shopping, takes up loads of time, raising it 3%, 4%, and some very nasty encounters will raise it even higher than that. Just outright, no choice. If that wasn't enough, certain enemies don't damage your stamina or reason, but instead raise Doom. So this thing is really all-encompassing. It's the lifeline you can't interact much with, but when you can, it's either a lifesaver or a really bad move. Doom acts as the unrest and dangerousness of the world in terms of the world play. Like, in equivalent to real life, having high Doom means things like riots happening, objectively evil things occurring. It's Doom, but just for gameplay, it's not much more than the timer. Still, it's a very important piece of flavor for fleshing out this universe. So I head out exploring and gathering information about the current mystery. In particular to this one, looking for information about the man who's also investigating the disappearance of the students and the woods themselves. Get flavor text at the top of your screen whenever you make progress, so it's a way to study how far into the mystery you are. In terms of gameplay though, this has no bearing, so if you're power gaming, you can just ignore it for the most part. After enough investigation is conducted, I'm directed to the woods. Here now, it's me versus a bunch of tiles hiding events. One has the ending tile I'm looking for. The others are all randomized. Had I completed the secondary objective during all of this, it cuts down the amount of tiles that pop up. I didn't know this at the time, but I recommend doing that anytime you've been given this mystery. It's always a net gain in terms of expediting time spent. After enough looking, I come across a cabin that supposedly belonged to a witch. Checking it out, the place is empty, save for a table with some cassette tapes on it, and some giant hole in the middle of the place. Well, being the smart gamer girl that I am, I decided to check out the big spooky hole. That was a bad move. A huge eye is looking right at me. Awesome. Well, you almost black out when suddenly the man you were trying to find comes from behind you, fesses up that he's part of some cult, knocks you out, and sends you home. Well, probably not the conclusion we were hoping for, but the mystery has been quenched for the most part, and this turns out to be ending B. Almost every mystery has multiple endings to it. The higher ranked endings tend to give better rewards, and usually, just for the sake of it, let things turn out for the better. In order to obtain these, you usually have to fulfill the secondary objective during investigation, and maybe some other hidden things along the way. Now, I skipped all over the flavor lore text during this mystery, but that's mostly because that stuff is way better experienced firsthand than looking at it through my eyes. So if you do give this game a shot, it's way more immersive doing it like that instead of being spoiled. So just that mystery alone sort of shows you the gameplay routine. There's not much else going on in terms of core gameplay, but it's where the secondary stuff shines through. This is a roguelite, so mortality is high. It's not too hard to die, especially on your first go. And to attest to randomness and difficulty, which I'm sure those two send some people into a seizure. Right from the start of this playthrough, I was immediately cursed with hunger. Permanently lowered charisma. No way to break it. Through your adventures, you'll accumulate perks and curses, along with conditions that positively and adversely affect your character. Perks can be as simple as small increases to stats, while some have other much more powerful and lasting effects. Spells can also temporarily increase stats for the remainder of a mystery. Item usage as well. Curses are permanent debuffs, lowered stats, less damage, other bad stuff. You'll have to make it all work in the end to be successful, because sometimes you just get plain unlucky and you end up looking pretty fucking bad. I mean, at the start of the game, Mimi looks like this. By the end? Yeah, okay, that's not good. The little pieces of graphics added onto your avatar is so great at creating immersion into the setting. By the end of the game, you typically start looking pretty worse for wear, and especially so if you've been getting way too deep in with all the old beatings. Being branded with curse signs, cursed with an internal hunger for flesh, being transformed into an amphibian. All else fails, you can find some of the ritualistic masks hidden about to hide your shame. That always works. You know, it's really great when the bloated teacher goes underwater and he bloats you. I wonder what that's a euphemism for. World of Horror really knows how to set the mood. It's one of the game's highest selling points to me, and it does this all with beautiful single-bit artwork and only a handful of pixels. It's a real testament to the drive the dev must have for his vision, and I love it. Now, a lot of this is all references to older material, both English works and Japanese works, but unfortunately I'm not familiar with any of it to really give context to it. All I know is that it's a big homage to everything. So the mystery is handled. It's time for another. You head back to your apartment to prepare and rest up. Or at least that was the plan! Every time a mystery is handled, a new status befalls the town. There's a small bunch, but the game randomly picks one. And it just so happens my very first one ever is contaminated water, which denies me the ability to rest in between mysteries. Hilariously, this is pretty helpful to new players, so being denied a bath when I'm home is beyond depressing. I never even got to see the screen for bathing until my second playthrough, which I thought was just hilarious. But it's a good point for the permanency of the game. The closer you get to finishing it, the tougher the environment becomes. And enemies scale with the amount of solved mysteries as well, so you better be preparing, and hopefully you're leveling. And speaking of leveling, let's touch on that real quick. Doing most of the mystery progressing objectives, like exploring and combating, earns you experience. This fills up at 100, at which you can cash in and level up. At the level up screen, you're given two choices. Your first is to select a perk for the level. On the left hand side, you're presented with 3 of them. Each have their own bonuses to give, and there's more of them on the list if you want to re-roll to see what you get. This increases doom though, so be careful. Though I pick quick thinking as my first, Ico is very dex based, and stacking your character's main stat is usually never a bad idea. Another bonus of some perks is that its name actually relates to random encounters in the game. So for instance, there's an encounter where another option is available in regards to quick thinking. If you've got the perk, you can do something else. and this is usually for the better. There are other cool perks that don't just confer stat bonuses. Another Vycos is goddamn fucking fast swimmer. Faster offensive actions. Like later on, go fucking crazy. Have fun attacking 10 goddamn times in a single combat turn. It's fucking blitz, man. Another fancy one is discipline. Every event that you can succeed or fail at, if you succeed, you recover 1 stamina. It's a great long-term perk, especially early on. And your second options for when leveling up is to increase a single stat or to recover a large amount of stamina or reason, which can get very helpful later on when you're pretty low. Like I was saying, it's the extra details that make this game pop out from the rest. I think it was a bold move not to have every mystery play out in the same fashion as one another. One minute you're in a linear adventure within the school, but the next you're free roaming and exploring. For example, let's take a look at Far Out Fable of a Fear Festival. Whew. Anyone who's played the game knows what I'm talking about. The investigation is completely different compared to all the others. You're given a small overhead view of a faraway village. You do your activities at different times of the day, and ultimately, you're trying to gather information on the festival itself. The pacing is so different, and unfortunately the only letdown is that this is probably the buggiest mystery out of the bunch right now, but it goes to show how dynamic WoW wants to be. It doesn't want to restrict itself to the same gameplay over and over, even if the intention is for that to be the bulk of it. Let's just skip to the final dungeon of the game, and I know it might seem spoilerish, but really, it's nothing more than a quick endurance run. You get a handful of randomized events that are only unique to the lighthouse itself. You gotta climb to the top of it, but the events, should you fail, usually result in hefty damage or a major increase in doom. And yes, it's happened to me where I literally cap out on doom as soon as I reach the end of it, and subsequently lose. There's room for error, but only if you didn't fuck up earlier in your adventure. But regardless, the game only ends one of 2 ways. You fail to stop the summoning of the old god, or you succeed. If you win, everything goes back to normal, for now, and you get a little happy picture. Good job. I was actually surprised I won my very first playthrough. I felt like I was sort of meant to lose, as it's usual for these types of games, but I made it through alright. Doom was getting pretty close though. Down in the extra menu, you can see a catalog of all the events and enemies you've encountered. They sadly don't show statistics or anything, but I imagine that'll change. You also have the achievements section. Now currently there's no Steam achievements built in, so this suffices, but the achievements themselves actually unlock content. And this is your primary way of influence for subsequent playthroughs. This is the roguelite portion of the game. Some are very simple and are no more than beat the game using this character, this difficulty, this setting, blah blah. Some are more interesting and need some thought put into them to solve them, like sacrifice your friend with a ritual dagger. I'll give it away this one time, saying that for this achievement, you need a certain mystery available, you need to have an ally with you, and you need the ritual dagger, which is one you can find, but you can also buy it. Other ones are just obscure beyond belief, and have fun trying to figure them out. The Blue Gem Riddle? Yeah, I haven't made it past step 1. Unlocking the 7th character is tricky as well. And something evil? I have no fucking clue! I've been stocked up to like 7 times and still no evil. Where is it? Oh, apparently it wasn't even in the game yet. One of the major rewards though, just for your first time clearing the game, is unlocking Endless Mode. This is one of the challenge game modes for you to try. You operate just like you would a normal mystery, but there is no final dungeon and there is no other mysteries to be had. Keep investigating the highlighted locations to progress. Progress is measured in how many times you've investigated, and you're given a reward every 10 times. Doom is also raising at the same time, however, so this is usually finite, unless you use a scummy magic trick. And speaking of magic, I completely overwent it. Magic serves a number of purposes. It dabbles a little bit in helping with combat, some of it supports you with easier investigating, some of it heals, and some even sets back Doom. It really covers all the bases, and there's even more spells to unlock. While magic is certainly really cool, the price you have to pay can sometimes be really expensive. Even more so, the price can sometimes outright just be stupid for whatever the effect is. Magic recently got balanced a bit from the latest update, but it really doesn't do much better in the long run when compared to stats and weapon scaling. And the old expel evil trick supposedly doesn't work anymore. That's incorrect as well. It still works, and I would even argue that it works better now. That's a bad bug fix. I'm really hoping magic gets the attention it needs because it can be very nice in its own respect, but for now, aside from its abilities to enhance stats and stuff, It's kinda just worse for wear, and combat does have quite the slew of actions to take part in. There is just normal bashing and whatnot, but the prep system, defense measures, last resort, if you encounter a ghost enemy, really do give the prayer attacks a try. Well, never mind, turns out you can only defeat ghost enemies by praying now, so... this is the real difficulties of reviewing an early access game. They just keep changing the rules on me the week later, you know? If you have allies, you can get them to distract the enemy as well as attack. It is super fleshed out. It just needs to be more noticeable is all. I mean, really, I could go on and on about all the little things because this game is full of them, but I don't want to bore with just a huge catalog in front of you. And well, the music is fucking insane. There's not even that many tracks, but the way they're composed, the pleasure of it looping, and how sharp it is. How each mystery will cling to a different soundtrack. The affiliation is real. When you hear one track, you say, oh right, I remember that mystery. And god damn, I can't wait to hear more tracks coming out. It's just simple bit-tune music, but it's so amazingly good. And there's different suites. When you're exploring, it's usually a calm, collected tune, but as soon as combat starts, oh yeah, it bumps up, it goes fast. Not to mention all the shifting that happens in between. When different events occur and stuff, it can speed up the music and it can slow it down, making it seem like an entirely new track is playing without you even realizing it. Oh, it's so good! And of course I could talk about the graphics, but you've been seeing it this entire time. If this sort of aesthetic doesn't capture your eyes, even if you're not a fan of this style, then surely it's lost on you. It's using such a minimalist architecture in terms of sophistication. It's literally no more than singular bit graphics, just with a high enough resolution to make it stand out. The only real trick this game gets away with is the wavy effect, some real Mode 7 shit, but just goddamn. And I didn't touch on this because it's currently disabled, but there's in-game modding support. Like, after the dev's finally done with the game, he'll leave it to the community to keep making stuff, and he's adding support for it. I'm not even a guy who likes mods, really, but I think that's really cool, and I think it would do a game like this tons of pleasure just to see what comes out. Let's cover over the last adventure option and call it a day. So this is where you edit all the parameters to your heart's content. And sadly, some of it doesn't do what it says, but the important bits function right now. Free selection of your character, background, difficulty, and old god selection. If you know what you're doing, this is your playground option, but it's fine even if it's your first time. You can include or exclude unlocked content, enabling you just to play the base game again, or mix and match. There's even seed generation, but what this affects I have no clue so far, and nothing is noticeable when comparing with other folks with the same seed. Earlier I said you could randomize stats of all items in the game. Yeah, I'm not convinced that's working either. The timeline thing is cool, but again, no clue if it's working. This isn't meant to deter you. This game is completely fine without these bonuses, I just want to get full coverage of it all. Every character has their own shtick and approach to the game, and even if you pick a character not suited for combat, don't worry. You can avoid all normal fights in the game, and this is a completely valid strategy. Bear in mind, some bosses can't be avoided. Whew! Okay, I've said a boatload this time around, huh? I think maybe this is enough to get you started. I'm not big on this early access shit. I think it's usually more of a blight than a blessing for games, but goddamn if World of Horror isn't coming out strong. It doesn't even have half the stuff it wants to yet, and it still manages to be this impressive. That's fucking awesome. I am really eager to see where this game goes and how far it can. And it came out to a really strong and positive reception as well, so people are clearly liking it. Now, yeah, if a chump like me beats it on his first go, well, the game may not really be as hard as you expect. It's certainly easy to fail, but if you just apply a bit of thought to the situation, it sort of glides along. Not that that's a problem, but the mastery of the game isn't hard. It advertises your first playthrough will take anywhere from 90 minutes to 4 hours. I think I beat my first game within an hour, and every playthrough after that has been like 20 minutes. I blitzed through this shit, though I'm no master. Like, yeah, you know the events inside and out, you'll be calculating purely on ways to mitigate loss rather than anything else. Unless, of course, you come across the katana. Get that shit every time! And yes, this game is like 80% RNG. Combat is fixed, which is nice, but everything else, yeah, it's random. So either learn to deal or move on. This is sort of that hallmark for rogue games, but certainly not its focus. Okay, let's stop. This game is fucking good. I feel like it's only going to get better, and it's one of the few early access titles I even bothered to consider buying, and I don't regret the purchase at all. Help us summon the old ones, it'll be cool, trust me. Oh, right, before I go, there's an option where if you save the game between mysteries and it causes a break and there's mechanics to it. It's like MGS3, but they disabled it right now. Okay, I'm good, bye-bye.